today, uh, talking about women's fights. Let's talk about Raquel Pennington and Marion Reneau. What do you think about that one?
Okay, this is one of those fights where I was talking about how we have fights where people are sort of different parts of their career. These two opponents are kind of in the same part of their careers as far as I'm concerned. They're a little bit older. Well, Renault is a little bit older because she started MMA later in life. Pennington is not necessarily older, but she's got a lot of matches under her belt. So they've both lost two fights out of their last three. So neither one of them is having a really uh, good time win wise lately. Okay. Um, they have good wins. Raquel Pennington, she's 10-8, which is not a great record, but we know that sometimes the numbers don't really reveal anything. Because if you're Raquel Pennington, you've been fighting at the top of the division basically from the beginning. So it's not maybe a surprise, but she has a decision win over Irene Aldana. She has a decision win over Tate, a decision win over Betch Correa. She has a rear naked choke of Andrade, which she was the champ, right? And she's beaten Modafari as well, who's going to be on this card as well. She has two losses to home, both of them decisions, and both of them very close. She has a decision loss to Durandamy, who's another elite striker and a much bigger opponent. She was TKO'd by Nunes, and she also has a split loss to Andrade, and she was rear naked choked by Kat Zingano. Now, what you can see from all of these fights is that almost all of them are much bigger, much tougher opponents in terms of just like size and power. And you look at somebody like Nunes in particular, who TKO'd her. Pennington didn't seem like she was ever really in that fight. Uh, Nunes was just too much for her, but Nunes has been too much for literally everyone. So you can't hold that against her. She took out Cyborg like it was nobody's business. She's taken out Holmes. She took out Ronda. She's taken out everybody lately in the same fashion. So I'm not going to hold that against her. Now with Marion Reneau, she's 9-5-1, so similar record. She too has lost two of the last three fights, but she's almost 40. And she started later in life, so maybe that's good. Not so much ring wear, I mean. But you know what happens after about 36? It becomes harder and harder to stay at that elite level. But she's got wins over Sarah McMahon by triangle. She also beat Andrade by triangle. She had a draw with Correa, and that was a very sort of dubious decision. I thought that Renault had won that fight. She has a loss to Kunitskaya by decision. She lost to Zingano by decision, and she lost to Holm by decision. So they share three opponents or they share four opponents in Andrade, Zingano, Holm, and Correa, and they both have a win over Andrade. They've both lost to Holm and Zingano, and Raquel beat Correa, and Marion should have beat Correa. So lots of similar opponents, similar sort of parts in their career, similar records. So it's fascinating to see that, and I'm really interested to see what happens because what happens with Raquel Pennington is that she wants to grapple. She wants to put you against the fence and kind of wear you out. But when the opponent is either a superior grappler, like somebody like Zingano or Nunes, or the person is just a sort of a bigger, opponent, it doesn't work. But she doesn't change it up very much. So she'll just stay on the fence like she did with Holly Holm, sort of throwing knees. There's not even a lot of dirty boxing going on most of the time. It's just one person's throwing knees, another person's throwing knees, and it's just sort of like she gets worn out eventually, and the Zingano eventually would take her down off the fence. Nunes would do the same thing. So that's always been her problem. Like, she has always been knocking at the door. She's been elite for a very long time. And when she moves forward, she's dangerous. But if you can get her to doubt herself and get her to move back, then it's a long night for her. That's what happened against Nunes when she was fighting Jessamine Duke, and this was on The Ultimate Fighter. Jessamine Duke is very tall, very long, and her background is striking. And in the first round, she was piecing up Raquel Pennington pretty good, just from really good striking because Raquel was backing up or she wasn't coming forward, kind of staying at range. And her coaches in between rounds said, you got to move forward, you got to move forward. And of course, that's an easy thing to say as a coach. But for Pennington, it actually did change the fight. When she started moving forward, her pressure completely overwhelmed Jessamine Duke. And she overwhelmed her not with grappling, she overwhelmed her with striking. The question is, does she believe enough in that striking in order to do the same thing against Reneau? Now, Marion Reneau is a jiu-jitsu champion. She's, she's really good on the ground. She has a couple of submissions, but her striking is excellent. And it seems to me that what she wants is to strike. And her Muay Thai is really good. And I think if she can back up Pennington, I think she takes this by decision. If Pennington is the one moving forward, then I think Pennington takes it. So the odds makers, as of yesterday, had this at a minus 135 for Pennington. And I have flip-flopped on this one a couple times. I literally have decision by Pennington on one side, and on the other side, I have a sub by Reneau late in the third round after both opponents are tired. And I'm having a tough time deciding, but I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to go for Marion Reneau on this one. And I know that it is a toss-up, but I'm going to go with Marion Reneau. I'm going to go against the odds makers, and I'm going to say she gets her by triangle, maybe in the third round, somewhere in the third round. That's my guess. So what do you think about Reneau Pennington?
Yeah, so yeah, I think I'm gonna go against you on that one. The odds make have the odds makers have Pennington at about minus 175,
It's better
but
than yesterday.
I think she's gonna be able to pull it off. It seems like Renault just comes up short, in the big fights, and I think Pennington probably should be able to pull this one off, just using her experience.
I mean, like, Pennington has fought almost nothing but former or current champs in her last, like, 4 or 5 matches. And Tisha Torres, who we'll see later in the broadcast, is the same. Like, she's fought nobody but former or current champs. So it's hard to take a look at their records and be like, well, she's 10-8. That doesn't look so good, right? But look who she's fought. She's fought everybody. I do think it depends on which Pennington shows up. If the confident Pennington who moves forward and believes in her striking shows up, right, and only uses that cage grappling to tire out Reneau, she can take this. However, if Reneau early on dissuades her from moving forward by being the superior striker, and I do think Reneau's striking is a little more powerful and a little more refined, if she can make her move backwards, then Reneau's going to take this either in a third round decision or by a finish later on in the fight. So I'm going against the odds makers, as I said before. I'm going for Reneau. Are you going for Pennington on this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Pennington. Like I know I think she lost her last 4. Again, it's been very tough competition.
Yes.
I think she bounces back in this one. I mean, you bring up 10-8, but just a few fights ago, she's 10-4, looking very promising. And
Yep.
fighters when they lose one, sometimes it's a tough one, and they go on a little bit of a skid, even undefeated fighters. And I think this is her little comeback fight right here.
All right. Well, that's going to be an interesting one. I'm actually going to be interested to see how that one plays out.